the toughest part, I think, is keeping the framework of the military in terms of your promotions, your assignment cycle, etc., and raising a child with autism, knowing that every 2 or 3 years you're going to have to repeat the same process.
This is Enable, the Disability Podcast, where we share stories, experiences, support, resources, and more for people with disabilities and different abilities. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. My name is Geoff Herbert.
And my name is Kurt Hower. We're talking with retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Jaime Parent and his wife, educator and autism specialist Tracy Parent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
You have a new book, The Mission at Home, about the challenges of being a military family with a child on the autism spectrum. What challenge surprised you the most?
The challenge of having a military career and also raising a child with autism simultaneously. Both have structure, both like repetitive type of things, but the toughest part, I think, is keeping the framework of the military in terms of your promotions, your assignment cycle, etc., and raising a child with autism, knowing that every 2 or 3 years you're going to have to repeat the same process of reestablishing your community, finding the right resources, both educational and health-wise. And so the fact that you're moving a lot in a very structured environment creates real incredible challenges for military families, more than I think if you were in the civilian world and you had a child with autism and the challenges that you face there.
So you mentioned moving a lot, and that seems to be a common thread with a lot of military families. What kind of resources are available through the military to provide more stability for the family?
The military has a health benefit called TRICARE, which is basically the medical component of the Department of Defense. So all military personnel and their families are enrolled in TRICARE. To help families with autism, the Department of Defense established a couple of ancillary programs in response to a lot of congressional pressure, a lot of consumer advocacy about, hey, we need help in the military and we're not getting enough services. So the military established something called the Exceptional Family Member Program. And this program is a separate entity from the medical component. And it's the first place to go when military families are either leaving or coming to their new bases, because EFMP has a lot of the institutional knowledge that someone doesn't have when they're moving into a new place. EFMP can help with classrooms, it can help with where to live, it can help with a number of different resources, including respite, which is a very good program for military families to have. The second one is a 3 or 4 year project called the Autism Care Demonstration Project. This allowed families access to applied behavioral analysis, also known as ABA. ABA has been very effective, especially in early intervention, in helping autism families with a lot of different speech and language and other type of social things. So you have TRICARE, you have EFMP, and you have the Autism Care Demonstration Project. And that package together has made life for military families with autism a lot better than ours when our son Brian was first diagnosed in 1988.
Tracy, when you're making all those moves and you're starting a new school for your child, what steps are taken for a child with autism?
Well, if you're in the military, one of the first steps would be going to the EFMP office. And the reason you do that is they know the schools that are around in the area and they can help you with that transition. And they assign you a special liaison officer that can help you with those transitions. That's very, very good. If you don't happen to have those resources, I would say that parents, the very first thing they need to do is let the child know as soon as possible that you're going to be moving, and get a calendar ready and have visual supports there to let them know how many days till you get to the new school. The second thing you want to do is reach out to that school and let them know that your child is coming, has an IEP, and see if they can give you pictures of the school, of the teacher. You can also get those things offline and start to get your child used to that's where we're going to go. That is the place that you're going to be educated. The third thing that I would do is as soon as you can get there, drive around, do those practices, do the drop off, do the pickup, go look at the resources, go look at the recess area. You really want to make sure the child starts to feel comfortable and know what to expect. That's where their anxiety gets high, when they don't know what to expect. The last thing I like to do is have a social story that we write that tells the child about where the classroom's going to be, that you're going to get picked up by a bus or driven in, that they're going to be in the school, this is their teacher, they're going to learn new things, have new students, but so much will stay the same. Like their lunch might stay the same. You're going to be learning about reading, writing, and math. That's the same. You really want to highlight those kind of things to have that anxiety go down. The next most important thing is our kids really have a lot of sensory needs. So I usually talk to the teacher and say, my child might need these sensory tools. Do you have a safe area or some place, a comfort area that the child can go to in the classroom to just kind of calm down, and some sort of signal that you would let the teacher know that you need a little bit of a break to calm down and come back. And the last thing is the home and school communication. It can be a simple page, but something that just, you can check off they had a good day, a bad day, what do they need, and some sort of thought that makes it easy for the teacher and easy for the parent so that the communication goes back and forth. And so those would be the mandatory things that I would say that parents with kids with autism should be looking at to make sure that they have a smooth transition to the next school.
Well, I am curious about um, when deployment happens. How do families deal with deployment, and what kind of resources, support groups, what's available, what's out there? Because I imagine that happens with a lot of families.
Well, when deployment happens, autism still remains, shall we say. Um, it's not just deployments, but it might be a case where a person on active duty is deployed to a place where there are no services. In that case, the military always comes first, and the military member and the family have to adapt. When deployment hits, a lot of people from the same base are going to be going to the same place, leaving the same families behind. What we've learned in our 35 years with autism is that regardless of the resources that you have in any community, families are usually the best resources available for anybody anywhere. By that I mean you always have your family, but you have a group of people of families that have similar issues the same as you have. They might not have a 2-year old, they might not have a 5-year old, or they might not have a 40-year old, shall we say, but still the issues are still the same. So when deployment happens, what I've noticed is families bind together. They've both lost a person in their particular family that is very important. Everybody plays a role in the autism family. When that person's gone, families kind of bind together and help each other out. This could be in a number of different ways: driving people, um, sharing rides, etc., and maybe respite for each other. Military families are very resilient, and they do reach out to other military families, which I think helps them get through that person's deployment until mom and dad come back home.
Yeah, I was thinking about state to state differences, but I can't imagine what it's being like in another country. So, have you noticed as you moved around the differences and uh, the support resources that are available to you?
Yes, and states are very different. The 50 states have varying degrees of programs. 50 states have different 50 types of Medicaid programs. So when you go to a different state, you're starting over basically with a lot of different things. The difference between state to state versus deployment would be you're still in the United States, and you're not going to have a remote assignment without in the United States. But the learning curve is still there. And that's why the offices like EFMP and the Autism Care Demonstration Project facilitate those types of moves, facilitate people getting those types of services. And EFMP is mandatory, so military members and their families have to enroll in it. And it gives the base the opportunity to know who these families are and to provide the correct support when needed.
Well, thank you very much for your service. And I really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast to talk with us and share about your experiences. Tracy, Jamie mentioned that, he's now retired. What does life look like for families with autism after military service?
At the military service, you're really kind of on your own, and you have to do those same things that you did earlier. You don't have the support that the military gives you in the structure, and those things were really helpful. So you have to make your own. You have to. The first thing I do when we go to a state is get online, find out where are the parent groups, because they're the biggest advocates. When you get a bunch of parents together, you cannot believe the power that you might have in numbers to get things done. So the first thing you have to do is you need to find that community. It's very, very important. We like to reach out to communities before we decide where we're going to move. What we've discovered is if we go somewhere that they have services for Brian, we can adapt, but Brian can't adapt that much. So we're looking for other people, other things to get involved. As children get older, it gets more difficult, and you don't have that base where everybody knows your child. You really have to make make strides. You really have to put yourself out there to find things to have your child involved in. So we always look for Special Olympics. We go out and look for companies that are welcoming to adults with autism because they're mostly adults now, and see if we can get them a job. We go look at the vocational um, uh, services that there are in the local area. And we just try to make sure that we're going to those parent groups and get to meet and mingle because otherwise it's a very lonely journey once you get out of the military, you move someplace new and you don't have a support system. So those are the kind of things that we have to participate in. We recently moved to Florida to help elderly parents, and we did not have a network. So the very first thing we did was look at Special Olympics, and Brian plays basketball and he does bowling, and now he's doing flag football, and that's where we met core people. Also, we've got him a job at many different places. Some didn't work. But we have one now that works. He's at Publix right now and he loves it. And the people there love him. And so it's finding those kind of things to get involved in the community and become part of the community and expect that you need to do something in that community along with take. You need to also give and contribute to that community. So those are the things that I would say that we do after military life.
Well, thank you. And we'd like to hear maybe a little bit more about Brian and if he could expound on that. What are some, things he likes to do? You mentioned that, but what are some of his special abilities that you've come to learn about or appreciate?
Oh, Brian has a lot. Um, he's one of those ones that can remember everything, and it just makes me amazed how good his memory is. The only bad thing about that is when he gets upset, he'll go all the way back to 1977, or I'm sorry, 1997, to remind me that he didn't give him Skittles when we were in church. Okay, so those kind of things, I wish he didn't have that good of a memory. So his memory is astounding. He was nonverbal when he was younger, and that it just showed us that all that stuff was going in. We couldn't hear him. He wasn't saying these things, but as he got older and learned how to talk, oh my gosh. And that is a big lesson to learn that you need to presume intelligence for all people, that they are intelligent, and that if you just can't see it, that doesn't mean it's not going in. So Brian's great with memory. He's great with making people feel welcome. He has absolutely no social issues as far as going up to somebody or introducing himself. And he actually puts people at ease. And I think that's really, really wonderful. So they love him at Publix because he greets everybody the same. And I think that's a beautiful thing about him. And he plays a lot of sports and don't play him in video games because he will crush you. You know, and he loves Marvel, so he knows all the character names, he knows, all their backgrounds, so he's a wealth of information in that way. And would you like to add?
I would say that Brian brings warmth. And by that, I mean, sometimes he walks into a room and he like quickly becomes the mayor. There's something about Brian that is an attractiveness to people's hearts. And the innocence that Brian portrays, I think brings out the innocence that all of us have in people. If you take the time to know Brian, and if you take the time to see and appreciate who he is and what he's trying to do, a bond is created, a bond perhaps that you wouldn't expect. For example, we were at JFK Airport a couple of months ago, and we heard from across the terminal, Brian, Brian, and we were in line, and the gentleman comes up. Come to find out, the gentleman is a customer at Publix in Pompano Beach, where Brian works. And here we are, 3,000 miles away, and Brian has a connection. Okay. So that's the type of warmth that Brian brings in. He brings out the best in himself, and what happens is the best of the rest of us also comes out to meet that.
That's great. Thank you.
That's wonderful. One of the things we kind of do with this podcast is, get people to know more about people with special abilities, different abilities. And it's really amazing that, he's so approachable and he makes those connections. That's wonderful. Another question I wanted to ask you is, Jamie, what do you wish more people knew about you and families like yours?
You can do it. You can do it. It's rough. We're blessed because Brian has speech and language. Other people on the autism spectrum do not. But you can do the best that you can by reaching out to other people. We found that there are some families that kind of hide the autistic member, and that doesn't do a service to that person or anybody in the community. Um, it is very difficult, but nowadays autism is much more recognized back in previous days. So nowadays, if Brian is exhibiting some behavior, a person in the community probably knows really what that is, versus years ago where they wouldn't know. I would say is the best you can do is, well, the things we highlight in the book is create a financial plan, work with other families, take advantage of government benefits. Um, you can do the best you can, and that's about all anybody can ask. We have our successes, we certainly have our failures, but if you if you love your child and that child loves you, I think that's a good starting point for getting through the rest of the things that you need to get through, whatever your circumstances are.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for joining us. And, this has been a very valuable episode for us. So thank you for sharing all of your information. But is there one last thing that you would like to tell the audience? Hey, um, a closing thought, something that you'd like to share?
I would like to share that inclusion matters and that we are a family like many other families are out there. And every family is kind of different, but every family is valuable and every person has something for us to learn. And I think that with compassion, consideration, and awareness, like what you're doing for us, this brings awareness and it's so important. So thank you very much. uh, we'll all learn each other. And the more that we learn each other and appreciate each other, the more we will see that each person matters and brings something to the table to make the world better.
I have one shout out for employers out there. If you're thinking of hiring someone with autism, when you do hire someone with autism or even any other disability, uh, in your heart, in your employee base, you're saying, we're doing a really good thing for people with autism. We're hiring them. We help them with benefits or whatever. And yes, you are. You're doing a tremendous thing for that disabled person. What people don't realize is when that person comes into your environment, that person changes your environment. They see somebody working a job and perhaps struggling, and maybe it makes them appreciate what they are doing. When Brian goes into a workplace, and we've seen this in different multiple workplaces, it brings out again the best in people. And when they see Brian working and when they see Brian successful, they 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 put their arms around him, not physically maybe, but emotionally. And it brings out the best. The dynamics change. You might not feel the same way about your job, or you might not feel the same way about coming to work. When you see that smiling face of Brian, who I would say is happier going to work than he is coming home from work. When you see all that dynamic, what employers soon realize is, hey, this is good for the person, but it's also good for us too.
Well said. Thank you very much. We'll include a link to your book in the description of this episode. Thank you again for your service, and thank you again for joining us. This is Enable, the Disability Podcast. We are at Enable Podcast on social media. Please like, follow, and subscribe.
And please share this podcast with your friends and family so we can share more stories about people with different abilities that bring us all together. Thank you.